Okay, so this is the route that we took by bicycle through Scotland. Where we left off, we were just near the border of Scotland and England at Berwick-upon-Tweed. We jumped on a train to get to Glasgow because we weren't so interested in this busy part. We wanted to get into the wide open spaces. So from Glasgow, we followed a bike path all the way up to Loch Lomond, and there we found a hostel that looked like a castle and kind of had castle-like prices, but that was our first night in Scotland. Then we cycled up through this forest and found some wild camping, lots of hills, lots of forest, wild camping through another forest, around a bend, another loch, wild camping. Then the rain kind of started and we made it all the way over to Oban, where we met two other cyclists, Tom and Sarah, who were traveling out to where we were going. We jumped on this ferry. It took 5 hours to get out to these islands called the Uists. Started in South Uist in Loch Boisdale. We camped in the wee garden behind a tourist office, and it wasn't until the next morning that we saw the no camping sign. Then we cycled up. We found a little kind of cruddy but very friendly people at a hostel here, and we stayed there 2 nights. The second night we actually camped. It was still, rainy and windy, and we continued up to Loch Maddie, and there we stayed in a hostel for a long time, I think 4 nights, but we got very sick, both of us at the same time, and we stayed there until we felt just better enough to get back on our bikes. So then we went up to grab another ferry that jumps over to these islands, Harris and Lewis, where everything shuts down on Sunday except for church. We did some wild camping by a standing stone overlooking a beautiful beach. Then we cycled here and found a woman who was running a hotel who let us camp on her lawn, and really nice woman. In the morning she made us tea and toast. Then we cycled up into Lewis, staying overnight in the capital city, Stornoway. And then we did this little loop. We tried to wild camp by a broch in Carloway, but it got so windy that we had to bail at 5 o'clock in the morning. And then we went another 3 or 4 kilometers to a hostel, and we stayed there one night before looping back to Stornoway. Then we tried to cycle back down to catch the ferry, but the winds were so strong it was pushing us into traffic and it was quite dangerous. So we grabbed a bus for most of the way to Tarbert. And from Tarbert, we got a ferry over to the Isle of Skye. And the seas were really rough and it was really hard not to throw up. But we both made it. Then off the ferry and onto our bikes into the wind and the rain, and it was getting dark, and we had to get around this bend to get to a hostel, and we just made it, and anyway, it was amazing that we did. But there we stayed for a while, maybe 4 or 5 nights, because we were feeling sick again, probably still from being sick in Loch Maddie. So anyway, we stayed at, but very nice people we met there too. Then when we felt a little bit better, we continued cycling. We did some wild camping. This little place called Ullinish, really lovely, around wild camping. Here we found some free camping because no one was there to take our fee, by the Coolin Hills. And we also went for a really nice walk in the hills there. Then back on our bikes to Broadford, where we stayed at a family-run hostel, and a very hilarious family. And anyway, I had started getting a reaction to some antibiotics that we were prescribed, and I had to get medication for that reaction in Broadford. We continued. We grabbed this last little ferry. The last day it was running over to Glenelg. We tried to do some wild camping between two. We were told there were 2 abandoned caravans, and they ended up not being abandoned. One of them was owned by a really nice couple that showed up. Anyway, then we had some spectacular weather, about 5 days of gorgeous weather along here. It continued for at least one more day when we came around the corner and saw the famous Eilean Donan Castle in a full sunshiny day. And then we made it to a little town of Plockton, where then the rain and cold just really started to come in, and we had pretty much decided this was the end of the cycling. We had hoped to do here and up here, but we just couldn't. So then we jumped on a train to Inverness, and then Inverness we did a last little tiny bit of cycling down to the tip of Loch Ness, and then from Inverness we grabbed a train. I can't remember the route, but it got us to Edinburgh. And in Edinburgh we had Warm Showers contacts the Butters, who helped us get ready for the next part of our trip, which is to Morocco, Marrakesh.